Hi, and welcome to Behind the Bell ATL with the Salvation Army of Metro Atlanta. I'm your host, Keely McGill. The goal of this podcast is to provide listeners with a glimpse of what the Salvation Army does. Many people tell us that they know we provide support to those in the community who need it, but they don't know exactly what we do. We hope to change that through our conversations with Army staff, clients, and community partners. Thanks for joining us. Hi, welcome to Behind the Bell ATL, brought to you by the Salvation Army of Metro Atlanta. My name's Keely McGill, and today we have Major Thomas McWilliams. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you do and your title and what you do here at the Salvation Army?
I am the Metro Atlanta Area Commander, which is a whole bunch of words, which means I get all the phone calls and the fun of running the Salvation Army in Metro Atlanta, which is 13 counties and all kinds of different programs.
Yeah, when I started here, it was so fun for me to learn the office structure and how everything works. And, everybody was like, yeah, Major. And I'm like, Major? Who's Major? Where is this in the organization? So it was very fun for me to learn when I started here. Can you tell me a little bit about your own personal history with the Salvation Army? Because I know it goes back for you as well.
I'm a son of the regiment, is what they call it. My parents were officers. They were missionary officers in Cape Town, South Africa, which is where I graduated high school from.
Wow.
And I've been an officer now 30 years, moving all over the Southeast United States and doing all kinds of different jobs. And now I'm in Atlanta and loving it.
We love it here in Atlanta. I was just very curious about this. Did you always expect to be an officer? Did it just kind of happen when you were growing up? How did you end up deciding to become an officer?
When I was 16 years old, I felt a draw. I felt like this is what I needed to do for my life. And I enjoy it so much. I just know I'm one of the lucky people. I get to do for my life what I feel really good about doing for my life. And that's not everybody.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I'm really one of the blessed, fortunate.
Awesome. I love hearing that. I also know a little bit of behind the scenes that you love the Salvation Army history and can go into depth about the Salvation Army history. But can you give us some key points in history that you think really stand out in part of the Salvation Army?
The Salvation Army has a great history. It is intriguing. And it has all the things you'd want in a movie where you've had people that have had intrigue and they've gone against the flow of society, or they've had tragic moments and happy moments. And in 1865, a Methodist minister at his church, and it was in England. And at that time, you had to pay a pew tax to go to church. And he wanted to rescue the very least people in the society. And so he wanted to bring those people into his church. And he had two problems. One, they couldn't pay a pew tax. Two, some of the proper church people were like, maybe not so much. So he said, you know what? I feel called to this. So he resigned, went to the worst intersection of London, England, set up a soup kitchen, and started with a philosophy which has carried us all the way to today. And that philosophy is, if I take somebody who has no hope, who is destitute, I give them a sense of dignity. I give them a sense of some hope in their life through a simple thing like a meal and clean clothes and a bed and a bath. Then I can minister to them. And that philosophy and that purpose for his life has carried the Salvation Army all the way to beautiful 2024.
Yeah, and I think you touched a little bit about the philosophy. Can you share what is the Salvation Army's mission and how it impacts what we're doing here?
Our mission is to bring hope. It really is. It's to meet people where they are, and the most destitute, desperate populations, whatever that is, whatever that looks like, because we do programs for young people and middle ground people and elderly people, and wherever it is that they need hope. That's what the Salvation Army is. And it's not just programs like we have here with shelters and boys and girls clubs and community centers and churches. And we go out, disaster situations, social service, meeting them in their homes when they're fixing to lose their homes. And so it's a ministry that's a ministry, but we want to help people and give them a sense of who they are, and then we want to tell them why we do it.
Yeah, I love that it's not just, one like area that we're trying to hit. It's an overarching, like, reaching people where they need it most. I love that part, and that's one of the things that I've loved learning since starting here. But can you share a little bit about, what are the areas that we're seeing people who are in need in Metro Atlanta?
In Metro Atlanta, I mean, the obvious one that's visible to everybody is homeless. And we are very active in the community, very active with the city, active with other nonprofit agents to try to address those issues, to try to figure out how we can best get Atlanta onto the track of really solving the homeless issue. Now, a lot of people think it's too big, can't do it. Well, maybe it is, but certainly if we sit back and do nothing, then how many people will be lost? And for us, if we take one family that's lost, destitute, hopeless, nothing, and we give them dignity and hope and a future. Now, we've not only affected the adults, the parents, but the kids and the kids' kids. And it's just that simple, that grassroots that we need to help and we need to be there. And the Salvation Army has, throughout its history, absolutely been there. And, one of the great things we did when we became the most famous, I guess, was in World War I, when the Salvation Army, that General Pershing wrote a letter to the general and to the President of the United States. And there was some Salvationists there working. And he said, look, don't send me more troops. Send me more Salvationists. And that moment was, he realized and recognized that we do more than just hand out a bag of food or help some soldier who's homesick, that we're really wrapping ourselves around them. And that's what the Army does.
I love that. Like I said, you keep bringing up stories of history, and I know you're a history buff about the Salvation Army. So I love hearing the pockets of, it's not just one thing that we touch. We touch in different ways, and it's a well-rounded way that we like to serve people around us. Can you talk a little bit about, how, the Salvation Army got started in Atlanta way back when?
Way back. Yeah, it's way back when now. But in 1890, the Salvation Army marched into Atlanta. And back in those days, when they would go into a new city or a new town, they would literally march in. And they would have a band and a flag and, tambourines and people in uniform. And they would march in, and they literally did that, and established in downtown Atlanta. And since 1890, we've been going full go for the city of Atlanta. And the history of that is so varied. As Atlanta has changed, as Atlanta's transitioned, the Salvation Army's transitioned. As the needs of Atlanta have changed, the Salvation Army's changed. And it's really been a great history of working in this beautiful city.
Yeah, and don't we have a college in Atlanta as well?
We have our Officer Training College, which I went to. It services the whole Southeast United States. So every Salvation Army officer is actually an ordained minister. And so we go to 2-year residential seminary, where it's kind of half seminary, which you would think of as, spiritual development, and half how to do outreach, how to work with the community, how to fundraise, how to do social services, all of the things that are a part of that, so that we are not just one thing or just the other thing. We are a ministry, social service agent that is combined into one beautiful package.
Yeah. Can you talk about the balancing of, the social services with also the religious aspect as an officer? I have to answer this question because right now we're in the middle of a capital campaign. So I get a lot of questions from our prospective donors on both ends. If they're more Christian driven, well, you're doing social service and you don't make people come to the spiritual side of it. Are you missing something here? And those that want to not have any Christian influence, well, you have Christian influence. Aren't you missing something here? And I tell them, the Salvation Army was founded as a ministry.
We are a ministry. And our philosophy of soup, soap, and salvation means that first comes the soup and the soap. That's what we do. Then we tell people why, but we never force it. We never tell them it's mandatory, never have told them it's mandatory that they sit and listen or that they participate in some religious services. But what we do is we shower them so much and give them hope. They want to know why.
Mm-hmm.
Like at our shelter here in Atlanta, we have church services every Sunday morning. No one who stays at our shelter, short-term, long-term, is required to go. Yet 100 to 120 people come.
Wow.
Just because their life is so destitute and there's a holistic hug here for them.
You know, you touched a little bit about some of the services that Red Shield provides, but you know, when you think of the Salvation Army, you think of bell ringers and kettles and toys and feeding people. You know, what are some other things that we're providing to our community?
The Salvation Army is really good at meeting people where they are the most in need. And so a couple of other programs that people generally don't know we do are we have 2 residential drug and alcohol rehab centers in town. And these are free to the clients. They're generally people who have burned through everybody else in their life. They've conned and used their family and exhausted all of those resources of their families. And they're literally living in the bushes. And so we're last net. And we have beautiful stories that come out of people who are redeemed, people who are put on a path, and people that we've hired that are now in positions of officership even that have come through those programs. We have anti-human trafficking program. Buford Highway in Atlanta is really just a hotbed for this. And it's not only just sexual trafficking, it's labor trafficking. And we work diligently in that whole corridor to try to salvage people again, try to meet them at the lowest point of their life. And so the Salvation Army does some great work, but we also then take them and we don't just rescue them and say, hey, you got some new clothes and now here's some food, adios.
Right.
No, we also are really expanding right now and working hard to expand our workforce development programs where we're trying to get people into credentialing and to make them really employable so that they can get their life put back together. And I had a great anecdote from this from when we were we're doing a building project and we were getting the permit and we were before the permitting board and they voted to say yes. And one of the people on the permitting board raised his hand and said, I want to take executive privilege. And the whole room was like, oh, okay. And he stood up, he pointed at me in uniform and he said, as a kid, I stayed in your shelter.
Wow.
And my family had nothing. And here I am today. And it was like, it works.
Yeah. Well, it's you know, we provide those immediate needs, right? Like the feeding people, but it's also like, what is a future goal? And like, let's set those goals. Let's get them on the path. It's, you know, one thing to help them in that immediate need, but what can we do to further them along to make sure that they carry on and keep going towards a better life?
Because what have we done if not?
Right.
We've given them a respite, one little moment of respite from their problems and their whatever it is they're dealing with. But you know, if you can establish somebody and bring them to a point where they are productive and fulfilled and positive for us, it affects every single one of us.
And it circles back, you know, like that was one of the things where I've noticed is that people always, there's that small touch of like, oh, the Salvation Army helped me here. And what are they doing? And they're the people who are, you know, volunteering for our events, or they're the people who chose to come back and work or like at the Salvation Army. And it's kind of like where they were, like it came back full circle and they were able to contribute back again to our community. And it's great. And
that was original Salvationism. When William Booth went out there, the people that were his first officers, his first soldiery, were the prostitutes, the drunkard in the gutter, the people that were deeply involved in vice and gambling and were just in that destitute area of London. And when he salvaged them, when he showed them the way that they could be more than that, when they could establish their life, they became his officers and his soldiers. And the Salvation Army is still that today.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think like over these long years of history, we're still doing that cycle of doing to recreate it. So back to history, can you share some like fun history things that people might want to know about the Salvation Army?
So one of the most fun stories of the Salvation Army, and it's actually recognized by some national donut companies, is the Salvation Army popularized the donut. And what happened was the Salvation Army was in the World War I theater. We were actually in the trenches.
Wow.
And we had kitchens there where we were giving away fresh socks, other clothing. It was a time period, so nobody get upset. Cigarettes. We were trying to give comfort to the soldiers. And we had kitchens where we were preparing and doing full meals. And as the story goes, a young soldier from Alabama came to one of the kitchens and said, look, my mom used to make something for me, and can you try it? And they said, okay. They had the basic ingredients for it. So they asked for his helmet. They took his helmet. They turned it upside down. They put it on a fire, put some oil in it, mixed up the basic ingredients, and bang, the donut. And as soon as the Salvation Army saw, oh, logistically, this is so much easier than bringing over all the refrigerated foodstuffs or anything else that was perishable, it became widespread. So when the doughboys came back from World War I theater, they brought the donut back with them. And like I said, some national donut companies recognize the Salvation Army in that, and the Salvation Army actually has its own donut brand.
That is so cool. That was one of like the first events like I helped with this year where we went with Donnie's Donuts, and they like made a variation of that vintage recipe, and we were able to give them out to the community, which was very fun. And it was cool to hear that like the full history behind like the Donut Lassies and who they were and like why they provided those services.
Yeah, and which may have been why General Pershing said, "Send me more Salvationists."
Right, like having the women's touch out there in the field.
Yeah.
What about some other fun things that are going on, in the history that we have for the Salvation Army?
The Salvation Army, out of that World War I experience, really exploded. That's when it really just took off around the world, and the Salvation Army started marching into other countries because up until that point, having been founded in London, we were a British Empire kind of group. So as the British Empire was somewhere, the Salvation Army was there. And we really hadn't gotten deeply into other places. And at that point, we broke out and started marching into countries. And we are now in 133 countries.
Wow.
Where we are doing services that are really tailored to whatever that society needs. So in some countries, we have hospitals, and some we are orphanages. Some we have lying out in the outback medical centers where they're just doing basics. So wherever it is that we're needed, we are the school systems for some areas. But wherever the Salvation Army needs to address in that society, that's what they address, which is one of the reasons why in Atlanta, with the push against trying to overcome homelessness in the community, which is why we're doing a big building project right now, and because we want to be part of the solution. It's not just people that are hurting. Cities hurt.
Yeah.
Communities hurt. States hurt. Countries hurt. And we want to be in that place of hurt, whatever that looks like. And that's one of the strengths of the Salvation Army, is that we can change and we can be whatever it is that place needs for those people.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit, we talk about Atlanta as like, oh, we're in Atlanta, but Atlanta's pretty big compared to some other cities, of course, in Georgia, but even in the nation. Can you talk about what it's like to manage, Atlanta and the different areas that we have here?
Atlanta is, because of our volume of programs here, it's a fun day. And but it's a good, fulfilling day. The cool thing about what I do and what we do in the Army is with this uniform that I'm wearing right now. In the same day, and this happens many days, the same day I can go and minister and talk to somebody who is absolutely destitute. And because I'm in the Salvation Army uniform, they accept me. I can talk to them about their life. I can talk to them about their hopes, about how to get to their dreams. And that same day, I can walk into a CEO's office at a high-rise in Midtown, and I can say, I've got a way to connect you with helping this person in the same uniform. and I'm just as accepted here as I am here.
Yeah.
So my job is got a lot of fun to it as well.
Yeah, and it's different areas and different like sides of the city. You know, like we have some of the lows of Atlanta, but there's also a lot of beautiful things that we have to offer here in Atlanta. Can you talk about, and you touch this when you go and talk to CEOs, but can you talk a little bit about like, donations and community contributions that can really help benefit and their impact that they have in Metro Atlanta?
Yeah, the Salvation Army, unlike some other national organizations, not all, but some, we're a ground up organization, which means nationally or internationally, the Salvation Army doesn't flow money down to us. We have to fundraise here everything to support all of the programs. And so really our team, which is definitely not just me, could not be just me. Every year we have to fundraise roughly $26 million to do what we do in this community. And the Lord provides and the people provide, and they are so important to what we do. And I don't have trouble asking for money either, so, and neither do some of my staff and officers. But it's amazing to watch the movement of people and people's hearts. And when you communicate to people, you're not just giving it to some pot of money that just disappears. But the Salvation Army has been known for generations by Forbes, by other entities that monitor this as one of the very top dollars to work in the nation, and we always have been. We don't lavish ourselves with stuff and with pay, and so most of every dollar that comes in, an overwhelming majority of every dollar comes in, goes directly to help that mother who is in my shelter right now, who has 3 kids. Because we average 50 kids a night in our shelter, it goes to help her and it goes to lift her up. And when you can communicate that to people, people want help.
So, you've talked a little bit about like the impact that these donations make and have on our community. And I'm really bad at just saying Atlanta, but we're the Metro Atlanta Area Command. Can you expand a little bit about what that entails?
The Metro Atlanta service footprint is really the entirety of Metro Atlanta. We have 8 different, which people would call, we don't call them, but they call them churches, which are spread Gwinnett and Fulton and DeKalb, and then even farther out from there. And we have 13 food pantries spread out all across the metro area. We do programs and social services throughout this whole footprint of what you would see as a Metro Atlanta footprint, which is the majority of people live in Georgia, actually. So we're doing work all across the board in meeting people where they need.
Yeah. And so talking a little bit about, like the metro area footprint, donations go a long way, but like, volunteering and having people come into these like different locations, that makes a big impact, right?
It's huge. We have thousands and thousands of volunteers annually, which we depend on. Without them, there's so much we couldn't do. We have, of course, some of the programs it would be automatic to think about is like our angel tree, where we have the toys that are going to the kids. We have just groups and individuals and big corporations that send over massive people that help sort toys, that help package toys, that help get toys ready. We have groups that go to our shelter and serve food, work the kitchen. We have people and groups that just do things like collections. They collect cans for a canathon every December. They collect towels and give them to our shelter. There's really an infinite number of ways that if people want to get involved, they absolutely can get involved. And we have somebody on our staff that doesn't do anything but help those people get plugged into the Salvation Army so they can be a best part of what we do.
Yeah. And, I think what I loved hearing about just your little spiel about volunteering is that, you tailor, like, if you're interested in volunteering for kids, like, we have an opportunity to volunteer here. Or if you're interested in just donating time or physical things or things that you might not have, like, are using anymore, we have a place to tailor, how your donation or how your donation of time is going to impact, our community. And I like that in the same way we tailor, the services we provide people, we offer that tailoring to our volunteers as well.
We want people to be involved, be a part of the solution. It is so easy to sit and see the problems and complain, but be a part of the solution. It's not that hard. You like I said, you don't even have to put yourself in a situation that you're horribly uncomfortable with. Organize whatever group you're in, collect a trunk load of cans, come out to our canathon, and make a donation. And you have become a part of the solution. And, if everybody that had the opportunity or the ability to do that, I think tomorrow Atlanta would be shown nationally as, wow, Atlanta has found the solution.
Yeah, well, it's just as simple as one, like, awareness, like people think of the Salvation Army and they see a kettle and they donate to the kettle, but what does that kettle actually lead to, and I think connecting that behind the scenes of, and why we did Behind the Bell, because we wanted to connect people to, you're making a donation or you're donating time or you're donating food, what does that truly go to and how does it impact? And that's kind of where this podcast, came from. Like, we wanted to share that message and connect people to behind the scenes.
And we love everybody who can come and be a part. The Salvation Army, and you're not too big either. We had one bank that sent hundreds, busloads of volunteers to one location, one of our many, many locations. And they went in and repainted and re-walled, retiled the ceilings. They went from stem to stern and just made that facility so beautiful. Happened to be a Boys and Girls Club facility we have. So beautiful for the kids that come into that center and go, wow, look at what somebody else did for me. And there is nothing more beautiful in who we are as people, and that actually change somebody else for the better.
Right. Or have like a piece of being able to like make an impact, like that small donation or that small volunteering of time, made a huge impact on a kid's life that you might not ever get to see, but just to go home and realize, like, something like that is going to impact somebody's day, put them on a better path or give them a place to be a kid, where they might not normally have it.
Yeah. And we have not just 3 Boys and Girls Clubs for that. We have 2 community centers. And like I said, we have 50 kids every night in our shelter. And every child that comes to us in that shelter gets case management. Every kid in our programs gets at least hope.
Yeah.
And they see something better. They see something that I can be something. I don't have to do what I've seen other people tragically do. They believe in me.
Yeah.
And that's an answer.
Yeah. And it might not be something that they get, ever. And to have that one person say, like, hey, I believe in you, let's work on it. Like,
you're good at that. What can you do to make that better? What can you do to enhance you in that area? Whatever it is.
Yeah. So we're kind of talking about future with, kids. What do you see like for the future of Metro Atlanta?
I think Metro Atlanta, and right now, we're involved in the battle as everybody else is in this whole world, really, I think, on trying to come up with solutions, trying to find the way that we can help homeless families, homeless individuals. So I think that if that's where we're really embroiled, and we're right now in the construction of a 5-story tower next to our shelter, where we are going to take what we already have and we're going to expand it and try to be part of the solution.
So, you were talking about like the expansion in Atlanta and like the growth and changing and meeting the people's needs. I kind of want to go back to talking about, the Boys and Girls Club, because that was something that was hard for my brain to wrap around when I started here. Salvation Army and Boys and Girls Club, like how did that partnership begin, and like how did it get started here in Metro Atlanta?
We have been, as far as Salvation Army, we've always been wide open to partnerships that enhance both the partner and us in our programming and in our ability to meet the needs of others. And one of our great partners is the Boys and Girls Club of America. And I've been an officer 30 years. In my second appointment, I had a Boys and Girls Club. And what that means is it's a Salvation Army facility that has been partnered with by the Boys and Girls Club of America. And together, we bring together, we have programming, we meet standards, we reach out to people together. So in Metro Atlanta, we have 3 of those locations, which are full service large clubs. And then we have 2 community centers, which are full service, every bit as big and has a number of kids, but they're just community centers, which we do the work with as well. But it's part of that partnership. And we have a lot of great partners in this community, and we really have to have every one of them and more. Would be great.
Thank you for sharing that, about the Boys and Girls Club, because to me that was like a hard partnership to like wrap my head around, but it shows like the significance of partnerships that we have here. So, it's October right now, but we're gearing up for the holiday season. Can you tell a little bit about the kettle seasons and where the kettles got started and what has changed to bring it here today?
The Salvation Army, as well as programming, has always been working for fundraising because we are grassroots up. So we have to raise the funds. Well, in the San Francisco dock area back in the early 1900s, as a fundraiser, one of the officers in San Francisco put out this big soup pot on the dock and encouraged people to drop money into it as a fundraiser that were coming off the ships that maybe had a little money, something like that. It wasn't what we would see right now. And the reason it was a soup pot is because Salvation Army was very well known for having soup kitchens. And so that actually was very successful. So it kind of spread like wildfire. And then I think it was in the eastern part of the United States that some cadets who were trained to be officers got the idea, hey, if we rang some bells, it would get people's attention over here. So they went out and bought some bells and started ringing. Well, that was even more successful. So now that spread like wildfire. And so that's where the kettle came from. That's where the ringing of the bell came from. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we are kind of coming to the downside, to the where this less effective. The reasons being, less people have cash.
Yep.
And more people shop online instead of go to the stores. Mm-hmm. So, but we still have the kettle out there, and we will have the kettle out there as long as it can do anything to help those in need.
Yeah, but it goes back to the partnerships, because we partner with those local stores, right, to be out there, and it's such an iconic part of the Salvation Army. I'm one of those that, when I first started here, I only thought of us as the bell ringers, and I didn't really know what that entailed, like behind the scenes, so it's just interesting to hear, yes, these go to the things, and tracing down where those efforts go to, as an employee, it's interesting for me to find out, but also, for our listeners, for them to know, like, those proceeds go to different places in our area,
And the volunteer base for bell ringing is dropped a bit because, for generations, we were dependent on clubs and Sunday schools and groups that got together that would come out and take a whole day or a whole week or something like that. Well, overall attendance at different civic clubs and church groups has declined. So now we had a group that could take a week before, now they can take one day. So there's a lot of pressure against the bell. Mm-hmm. But if nothing else, for iconic reasons, we need to be out there.
Yeah. And just like we tailor our needs, like we cater to the people who we serve, we're catering the ways that we get donations, right? So we're starting like the virtual red kettle, Can you talk about like how that like got started and how it's doing here in Metro Atlanta?
It's not as romantic as a kettle hanging off a tripod with a bell ringer next to it. But it's the exact same philosophy, only it's taking it from in front of the store and putting it on our phone. Mm-hmm. And we have a program where anybody anybody, and we'll help them, can set up a virtual red kettle. And then what they can do is ask their friends to donate to their red kettle. And they fundraise that way. And this is picking up momentum. Last year, it took a big leap from where it had been. Hopefully this year will take another leap, but it takes people a while to transition.
Oh, yeah.
But
Change
anybody, you talk about a situation or a way that anybody can help Salvation Army. Get a virtual red kettle. Ask your one family member to donate to the virtual red kettle with you. And you're not ringing the bell in front of the store, but you're ringing the bell.
Yeah.
And it makes such a difference.
I love that. On top of, our bell ringings and our kettles, what kind of other holiday events do we have going on that are a big hit for the Salvation Army?
Well, December is, and I've mentioned it a couple of times, Canathon, huge. We have 13 food pantries that run year round. And as you can imagine, stocking that, especially when grocery prices are high, we have seen this last year, a tremendous influx of people needing food. Some are needing it just to get them to the next paycheck because their dollars aren't going as far as the grocery store. So it's been a lot more drain. So our Canathon event in December is very important. So we would just ask people, you know what? Go to your family's house, raid their cabinet, say, you're not eating this stuff. Let me take it and put it in this bag, and let me take it down to Canathon.
I actually have a funny segue, there's this trend going on social media where people will go into the cabinet and try and find the oldest expired item. So I'd like to mention, if you go in and get to your pantry and get old items, make sure they're not expired before you donate them to us. We'd very much appreciate that. So don't do that trend with us, but it is a fun thing that people are doing.
And it has to be non-perishable too.
Yes, that's true. But it's also people think here Canathon, it's other items too. It's chips, it's, cereal, it's pasta, it's, and boxed chicken broth, different things like that. It doesn't traditionally have to be a can. So don't get stuck in the segue of, it has to be, canned green beans. You can get creative with it.
And every one of us has gone in the grocery store this last year and walked out and looked at what we got and looked at the receipt and went, oi. Now imagine if you are a single mother with 3 kids and you're trying to feed them, and you walk into the grocery store and you walk out and you look at your bag and you look at your receipt and go, oi. It's not just the people who have no food that we're helping. It's those that need a bridge to get to the next paycheck.
Right.
And when you meet those people, when we talk to those people, when we see the heartbreak of these people, it's such a simple way to give. Just give and be a part.
Yeah. Be a part of something, fun. And Canathon, we make it fun. Kids come out, there's the band playing at different locations, So it's not just, it's a day of giving, which is great, but it's also a fun way to get involved with other people in your community, and it goes back to, yes, it's a fun event to get involved in, but at the end of the day, you are helping that mom. You're helping that mom reach and extend, and help provide for her family when she might not have anything else to give that night for her kids, so it's a fun way to get involved, but it's also making real world work in our community.
That's absolutely wonderful. And it takes every single one of us.
Yes.
I get to wear the uniform. I get to do the fun stuff. So, some people may not think it's fun. I think it's fun. I get to do the fun stuff, but it takes the thousands of people in this whole large metro Atlanta footprint to make it happen. And they may not get any accolade for it. They may not get any recognition for it, but I'm so thankful for them. And they're the ones making the difference.
Yeah. So talking of thank yous, I want to say thank you for, coming on to the show today, but also, when we brought this idea of hey, we want to start a podcast, you were like, I'm on board. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
So as a creative individual, I just want to say thank you for letting us make this dream a possibility, here in the office. But also thank you for letting, be interviewed today. And is there anything else you'd want to share with anybody listening?
Anybody who wants to get involved at all, and you don't know where to start, just go online. They can go to, right now on their phone, on their computer, wherever they are, salvationarmyatlanta.org. Get started. They can go to ringthebellatl.org. Get started. They can collect some cans. Get started. They can buy a toy. Get started. And I think that once people get started and they get that feeling of, you know what, I've done something good, and it makes me feel good, then they're repeat customers. And we love every one of our wonderful people, donors, volunteers, everybody who supports the Salvation Army.
Awesome. Well, thanks guys for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.